All right. What's up, Jared?
Nothing much, man. Good Tuesday. How are you?
Do you ever have days where you just like you can't get going?
For sure. Yeah.
It hasn't happened to me like this in a while. Like I've been in a really good flow. Um, I've been home for more time consecutive than usual, and going to sleep at similar time, waking up at similar time, similar energy levels. And for whatever reason today, it's just been a lethargic start. But
Yeah. For me, I usually have to, I always journal, right? So like I'll think like what is it? What could it be? It could be like for me, there's a handful of things. Did I eat pretty crappy last night? That's kind of low hanging fruit. It's either yes or no. If it's yes, then it's like, oh, that's probably it. Did I sleep crappy last night? Sometimes it's like, did I train more than normal? Right? Because you and me aren't games athletes, but I'll get roped into doing like a second session sometimes or whatever. And then the next day I'm lethargic and I'm like, oh, I overtrained. Like my body's just not primed for that kind of
dude, four
activity.
4 years ago, I felt like I was like challenging you on some workouts. Now I'm like a shell of you.
That's probably because you travel too much and I travel less these days than normal. Um, I will say I have gotten fitter over the years. I'm weaker. I'm in a lot more pain now than I used to be. So
The thing I was thinking is that yesterday I did a more in there's like short time domains but intense output with rest workout, whereas usually I've been doing longer sustainable stuff, and so I'm wondering if that was just a little change that made me more tired. I'm not sure.
could be, dude. It kind of goes back like, which is interesting about the CrossFit evolution is like the early days, which I'm not claiming to be a part of the early days or anything, but like the Fran type workouts seemed a lot more popular. Like people were puking a lot more at CrossFit gyms 10 to 20 years ago. And now there's so much more like methodical, like there's more long AMRAPs, there's EMOMs, there's like tactile, like 5 rounds for time, and you want each round split to be something like this. You know what I mean? I find I stray away from those short ones. I have to like build them into my week if I don't see them in the class programming, because I'm like, I don't want to go a month without doing a 3 to 5 minute sprint. But when I do those, like, yeah, I'm more sore and I'm more beat up than a 22 minute, concerted effort, 85% effort workout. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and I mean you were at the games this year. I was not, but I watched some stuff from afar, and it looked like the back-to-back workouts that were in that time domain you're talking about Saturday night, I think it was.
yeah,
That was the most carnage that I saw.
yeah, that and running Isabel.
Similar time domain, similar
Yeah,
result.
and that second sprint, man. Obviously, my eyes were on a few athletes, like the athletes that we work with, and I remember Austin, for example. I've never seen him. He's obviously one of the fittest on earth. I've never seen him so out of it during a workout. Like it was almost like the third box he was blacked out. You know what I mean? Like you could see it in his eyes. He didn't have that like determination. It was more like going from one box to the next. It was just kind of like he was sort of trying to exist for 2 or 3 more of these boxes. And then going to the finish line, there wasn't that like that cool, they jump with the right foot that has it was sort of
Right.
like
Just get up my body up on this thing
yeah,
somehow.
exactly. So that workout was tough, man.
Well, and
I
I did this study probably 3 4 years ago now. It was just after Fraser retired, so maybe 2021. He dominated workouts that were 3 to 6 minutes long. So did Tia. And in the new era, like, you know, that's like if you want to be the best, you got to be the best at those things. And so this I think is such an interesting thing to come full circle almost in this conversation today for me, because those longer sustainable pieces are just easier. I can hop on a bike. I can tell myself I'm going at a good rate, or I can say like, oh yeah, this is a good pace for me for this many meters, whatever. I can hop off, do some burpees, do some dumbbell stuff, whatever, get back on, and 30 minutes later, I know I got a good workout. But that's for me, that is easier than convincing myself to do Fran.
yeah,
And
I
it's
agree.
not even close. It's like 10x easier.
I think most people would agree with you. Even I would even say like the high power output people that technically are better at those short time domains would still in most cases prefer to do a longer 80 to 90% effort workout. Because you do have people like at the top of my mind comes like really what was the event in Oklahoma this year? The fittest experience. Like there was a lot of sprint power output events. It's like you could argue Nick Matthews is better at those things than the average.
Or Jacob Marlowe, who did very well at that competition with more of those in there.
When I first started CrossFit, I was far better at those things just because I could I'm more of a powerful athlete and I can do 21, 15, 9 deadlift, handstand push-up better than most people because it's like I got 3 minutes in me and then I'm falling apart. I've gotten a lot better at sustained effort over time. And now, even though I know that I'm better at shorter things than the average person, I still don't want to do them. You know what I mean? Because it's just a different kind of pain that you have to commit to. You do enough of them, you're like, I'm vividly familiar with the pain I'm about to endure. And I'd rather just have a 20-minute-ish workout or a 12 to 15-minute workout than a 3-minute workout. So
yeah, if I meet an athlete that's like a contender, elite level contender, and they tell me they're not nervous or not scared of Friendly Fran, I'm scared of them. Because that should put a little bit of fear into you,
Absolutely. I think, obviously thinking of Friendly Fran, I think Colton like beat Matt's record on that, right?
Yeah, I mean and Colton is someone to be feared. Like this guy does not shy away from going to the place that we know exists, so we don't want to go to.
Yeah, and I think obviously that particular workout is sort of tailor made for him. The games workouts were unique because it had that machine element, so it was like kind of a trap in a way. I remember Austin talking about he did the bike erg harder than he did in training, and then the bar muscle ups were the hardest ones he's ever done. So it always kind of goes back to that same, like if you're the first one off the bike, you're probably the last one to finish the workout.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, what I think is it was you didn't want to be the last one off the bar.
Yeah.
If you got off the bar first, there wasn't a lot of passing going on the burpees. As hard as they were, it's difficult to make up a lot of ground there. So whatever you had to do to manage the bike plus the gymnastics and get to the box was what I would be trying to seek out. But I wanted to extrapolate it just to the bigger population in general, because there's been tons of conversation over the last year, 2 years, as all these other things have emerged to sort of challenge CrossFit in one way or another. And a lot of them, I think that the people that are holding really, really close to the methodology are, it's so ingrained in them that intensity drives adaptation. And that's what I was thinking about this morning. I've been working out, but I haven't been going to that place, that intensity, that if you're following, even if you're only following .com, which actually would be great for 90% of the population at least, that forces you a couple times a week to go there, even though it's 5 minutes and then you're flat on your back.
Yeah. I think what I've seen just from coaching over the years is that, well, I guess it's sort of a rabbit hole, but I'll try to make it really short, is like, one, coaches generally, right, if there's 10,000 plus gyms, right, this is generalization, coaches in many gyms can be better at explaining the reason for the workout that we're doing. And I say that because what I've seen over the years is that people are less inclined or less excited about those 5-minute workouts. And I think it's mainly because they want a productive hour. And so when they see, oh, there's a lift for 12 minutes, 5x5 deadlift, and then there's like a 5-minute Metcon, many people think, well, that's not the best use of my hour. And that, again, goes back to my first comment of like, we just as coaches have to be better at, whether it be through, if we're going to publish the workout in advance, like having a note about stimulus and intensity and like, hey, this is a short workout, but be prepared to have a long warm up, and then when we coach that class, like, hey guys, the reason why we have this is intensity, and then talking about the value of that and the adaptation that takes place, et cetera. So I guess in short, people avoid those from the class perspective more these days because they just don't know why we're doing them, because we have a whole new wave of people doing CrossFit now than we did in 2007 to 2015. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
So yeah, I guess I've sort of passed the buck back to the coaches and the programmers to say, like, why are we doing a 5-minute bloodbath workout, so the athletes know, oh, okay, this isn't hurting for the sake of hurting. This is hurting for the sake of, one, being prepared for everything all the time, but two, adaptation.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, you can tell if you just go for a 30-minute run 3 times a week over a month, you can tell by the end of the month that my legs don't feel as tired. My breathing is a little better, whatever. You can tell if you do bodybuilding consistently, following whatever program for a month, that, okay, my muscles are a little more well-defined. You can't tell unless you go to a doctor regularly and ask for these things to be tested. All those biomarkers that are, when we say intensity drives adaptation, that's actually what we're talking about, is the internal stuff that you can't measure. And so I agree with you. It comes down to the coach or the people that are, the owners or whomever, to make that a priority, that people understand why we're doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of asked you to do this podcast. I told you I was like pretty just curious about the last, we'll call it 18 months of your life. Just high level, you moved from, from the East Coast down in the South. You were in Florida for a while. You went north. You were up in New York City. You want to talk about that? And you're back actually in Charlotte. It's just like I left and you came there.
Yeah, I love it here.
And that experience in New York City, what was the job that you were hired to do up there?
So I got recruited by Lifetime, formerly known as Lifetime Fitness. That's probably how most people would know it. To go grand open.
What's it actually known as now, or called now?
It's just Lifetime.
Okay.
Just Lifetime, yeah. And I'm like big on semantics. So anyways, Lifetime Fitness, we'll just call it Lifetime Fitness. Yeah, they had recruited me to go to Brooklyn, to South Brooklyn, to grand open a new location there. It's a unique opportunity, and I'll kind of give some context without taking too much time, but like from 2008 to 2015, I worked for a gym called Lifestyle Family Fitness that got bought out by LA Fitness. And then I was a GM with LA Fitness, and I was really a part of the new club opening team for a couple of years. So I like helped open these new clubs in the Jacksonville market, which is what brought me to Jacksonville. And so I didn't do that. I left that, started Superfit Foods, did that for 6 years, sold that company, got on the road, started Zalos Games, E3 Sports, etc. And so I sort of, through different people that I knew, got reached out to by a recruiter. It was a great opportunity. I mean, especially for people that like working for companies and corporations, Lifetime is an incredible opportunity in the fitness industry. So yeah, so all my experience kind of led to this serendipitous introduction. And then they asked me, or they offered me this role to go to Brooklyn. It was kind of a deal I couldn't, an offer I couldn't refuse. I will say I have very little.
I'm super familiar with making offers that people can't refuse, if you don't know what I'm known by around these parts.
So I had very little interest in moving to Brooklyn, but I thought I can do anything for a year. I mean, I'm from Florida, right? Like Central Florida. It's just a totally different place. But yeah, I took the opportunity and figured out a way to run E3 Sports and at the same time as working for Lifetime. And I did that for about a year. It kind of was what I thought it was. Like, I didn't want to be in New York long term.
But look how happy you look in New York.
So happy. Yeah. No, I will say I had a great time. Like, a year was kind of my cap, my limit.
Okay. So it was kind of planned that you would spend a year there.
The conversation was really around 2 years, but like, again, I'll preface with, like, Lifetime is a great corporation if you like working for corporations, but me being like entrepreneurial to a fault, I just had a really hard time with the red tape and bureaucracy. And I'm very much about like working at the granular
red tape?
Red tape. Yeah. That red tape. That's funny. Good timing. So anyways, I stepped away from that GM role and, planned. I was sort of like, when I'm done with New York, I'm going to Charlotte. I really like Charlotte. Planning on opening a gym here, a CrossFit gym. So that's kind of the next stage of my professional evolution. But yeah, I was at CrossFit South Brooklyn when I wasn't at Lifetime. That's a really great gym if you're ever in Brooklyn. Great community. Yes, if that's the power clean workout, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, that was so CrossFit South Brooklyn has 2 different buildings, one across the street from the other. They have classes in one and then open gym in the other. And I use the open gym mainly because their classes were like waitlisted, which is great for them.
Wow.
Yeah. So they do really well. They've been around for almost 20 years. I know Rad does a lot of stuff with them. They have a great relationship with Rad. So just really cool community. That
Was
is
this
Bronco.
guy a byproduct of the move to New York?
I got him 3 weeks before I moved to New York.
Dang, so he's been on the adventures with you.
Dude, yeah, and he hated New York too. He was a rescue that I got in Miami.
Hated New York too.
Like Brooklyn lifestyle, I lived in a high rise.
Mm-hmm.
Like the weather was crap. I worked way too much. So like having a puppy was really tough. It was not smart. So now, like before this call, I was downstairs in like the little dog park throwing the ball to Bronco, so he lives a much better life.
So everything you said there makes so much sense to me, just knowing you, like the entrepreneurial mindset and motivation and taking on these challenges. Obviously, lifetime job is a totally different challenge. I'm curious what if it exposed you to a type of fitness, being in what we would consider more of, it's not a CrossFit box, right? But you guys were having, I think it was called alpha classes that were basically kind of integrating CrossFit with that community there. But I would imagine that the amount of time you spent at the gym, that you came across a lot of different people who are motivated to go to the gym for things not other than CrossFit.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of where I come from, right? Because I spent almost a decade in the Globo gym world. So it's something I'm familiar with, but it's evolved a ton, obviously. And New York is sort of the epicenter of like trends and like phases of the fitness industry. So this is actually in Charlotte. But yeah, I mean,
is that still with the alpha stuff? Is this at a Lifetime?
Yeah, that's the Lifetime here in Charlotte. Because there's one here, which is great. But yeah, I mean, alpha is sort of like a luxury approach to CrossFit, which is unique because it has Olympic weightlifting, it has gymnastics, it has metabolic conditioning. I will say it has low skill gymnastics. Like you won't see anybody doing handstand walks or ring muscle ups or rope climbs, but there are like kipping pull-ups and snatches and workouts. Unfortunately, Lifetime being a massive corporation, the coaching development for a class like alpha is, I'll just say, bad. I will say hands down, I was probably the best coach in the whole company. And that doesn't mean I'm the best coach in the world. It just means like Lifetime could use better coaches. So if you're a CrossFit coach looking for another form of income with a Lifetime in your area, I'll promise you Lifetime probably pays more than the local CrossFit gym. No offense to that gym. And the community was great. The biggest difference is, and what really one of the factors of leaving Lifetime to say, okay, I'm going to go to Charlotte and I'm going to open up my own gym. It's really like it's time, was the culture of like work ethic. And it might be a New York City thing too, because I've only coached at a Lifetime in New York City. Is like, dude, I was the fittest person I knew in New York, for example. Not the best runner, bunch of runners, bunch of triathletes and stuff, but just overall general fitness. Like I was the fittest person, which I think just says something about like people's, one, belief in themselves, and two, like their desire to work hard enough to get to that level. Like people would come in and they do consistent classes, but when I'd say like, hey, you could do the RX weight, I've seen how you move, it's just kind of a lot of like, no, I don't think so. And you're like, all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas in the CrossFit culture, people want to see what they're capable of, because that's always been what it's about, is like, what are you capable of? What can you accomplish? And then you race, and there's a little bit of ego, and like I think all that contributes to the positive side of CrossFit. But at Lifetime, you really don't see that level of like passion of like, I'm gonna PR my snatch today. It's more like, I'm gonna go about 60%, and then call it a day.
Do you have friends in Korea? This guy got to go to work in Korea. Can't wait to watch this lead.
Oh, that's Riley Beebe's dad, Ben.
Perfect. Nice.
Yeah, he's in the military in Korea, obviously.
The answer is yes, and I knew that he was over there because Patrick has met up with him when he's gone there for the Asia qualifiers.
Yep, 2 social butterflies. So
nice.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know that I have any friends in Korea. It's been a long time since we did the Zalos games, so that would be the only reason why I know anyone in that part of the world.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't know too much about your past in the Globo gyms, but I was definitely intrigued by that, and just interesting. I haven't been in a Lifetime in years, but when I first was getting out of or in college and kind of vaguely aware of CrossFit, some of my friends were starting to do it at Lifetime gyms back then as well. But man, it's probably been 12 years since I've been in a Lifetime, maybe longer.
And they've evolved a ton. Like they've launched Alpha in that time. They're now launching something called the LT Games, which is like their approach to High Rocks. That like debuts this weekend actually in Minnesota. But what I will say about Lifetime that I do love is that as much as I believe CrossFit is the best training methodology that exists in the world, and that I think everyone should do CrossFit, Lifetime reminded me that like there's so many different platforms and avenues you can go down to pursue your fitness. And I love all of them because I just generally I think a fitter world is a better world. So if like cycle is your thing and you want to do that 3 times a week and like your best friend joins you to do that, and that's what you wake up excited about. So that's what I did love about Lifetime, is that they have so many different, the yoga, and then you have a yoga community, and cycle, you have a cycle community, etc. Right. So that's, that was kind of the motivating factor for going in there, was like Lifetime has almost everything for everyone as long as you can afford that pricing tier. They're luxury athletic clubs basically. So
and I think that mindset in general is one that's worth, people contemplating on their own. If once you've been exposed to CrossFit, especially if you have a context of other fitness methodologies or options that are out there in terms of pursuing that, your perspective can change. None of my family does CrossFit. All of my family members are active. They're regularly doing some kind of activity in their life. I've never pushed them to go towards CrossFit because I'm with you. They're fit relative to the general population. They're not fit compared to the people that you and I know intimately through our travels with CrossFit. But they're moving, they're sweating, they're getting their heart rate up, they're doing things to stay active in their life, and it's good. And this is like this, I think there's this really fine line. I've been wrestling with this myself. If you do know about CrossFit and you think that it is so critical for solving these medical problems that exist at a mass level, but you also understand what we've just kind of identified is that it's hard and not everyone wants to do it, then how do you find the balance? It's almost like religion, right?
Yeah.
If you think that you found out the perfect solution to religion, whatever that means for you, you want to tell people about it. But telling them that you found this thing is not usually going to make it that they find it. You have to just kind of live it.
Yeah.
And I think that's as old school as Greg Glassman ever was. I don't need to buy any billboards. We go to the gym, we work out, we go out in our lives, and people see us.
100%.
That's the advertisement. So anyway, that was cool. You mentioned that during the time you were in New York, you also were maintaining E3. And somewhere along the way in the last year, you met a couple of athletes that have turned out to be pretty impressive. A few of them are featured here on the front page, some of the guys, but your roster is actually starting to grow quite a bit.
Yeah.
So let's start with Austin. When did you meet Austin?
Man, it's actually a funny story. When I was working with Underdogs Athletics in Vegas, like 4 years ago now, something like that, I wore a lot of hats, and one of those was like we would get like onboarding questionnaires for athletes that wanted to be a part of Underdogs, and Austin had sort of applied, and I would reach out before assigning them a coach, just because I knew the coaches best, so I would know how to do that. And so I got on a call with Austin, and at the time, he literally, I think, had like one post on his Instagram, and it was a 400-pound squat clean.
That's like the most Austin Hatfield thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, little warning for the WFP people next weekend. But so we got on a call. He was obviously younger. He's like 21, 22 at the time, and we talked about him working with Underdogs. But at the time, it just didn't work out for a few factors. I'm not sure what it was. And so he didn't move on with a coach at Underdogs. And then I believe a year or two later, he started just like the template program at Mayhem. And then like a year after that, I saw him started popping up in the media. He was at Crash. Obviously, John Young had a lot to say about him. And I was like, I know this guy. but I couldn't. I have so many dang conversations. But I'm like, I've met this guy. I know this guy somehow, and I had to kind of like dig through my emails, and I was like, oh, okay, there's a. So I was like, oh, we chatted, and so then I just hit up like Jake Lockhart and Jake Foster and was like, hey, what do you know about Austin? Like, who's working with him? They're both at Mayhem, coaches, and Jake Lockhart is, I believe, the president of Mayhem, and they were like, yeah, he's kind of quiet, young, super fit, comes here every couple months. He's going to be great. So I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, dude, I don't know if you remember me, but we talked a while ago. And with how he communicates digitally, it was like, yeah, you know what I mean? And I'm like, all right. So we got on a call and I just explained to him how it works. And that was before last year's semifinals, I think. So we've been working together about a year and a half.
And basically in that year and a half, he's gone from being someone that very few people know about to someone that if you like this sport, you can't not know about him. And you've gotten to be kind of with him on all of those steps in the midst of maybe the busiest year of your life overall. I know you were working a ton in New York, new puppy, like you talked about. And it's, and it seems like in some ways, like E3 is kind of reemerged, and he's been a part of that, like a pretty important part of that process.
I agree. There was really kind of a turning point, and I don't know exactly when it was. Maybe it was when I sort of committed to like, all right, in like 3 or 4 months, I'm going to be stepping down from this GM role because I'm a really proactive thinker. And so I thought once I step away from this GM role, one, I'm going to have like 50 hours a week more. Two, I'm going to have much less income, obviously. And then three, like, what do I want to do with that? More importantly, what do I want to do with that time? Like, what kind of impact can I make with that time that I'm going to have back? And at the same time, I began to think like, we had maybe 10 athletes on our roster, and I was starting to learn a lot more about the business of agency, right? Because it's really been an evolution. And sometimes I can tell the long story. So I'm going to try to make this very short, but like probably 15 years ago, around that time was when the first agent in CrossFit sort of popped up. And that's probably Jason St. Clair and Matt O'Keefe. And we're talking about Matt O'Keefe working with Frazier, which wouldn't be 15 years ago, maybe 10. And then, Jason St. Clair working with Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet. And so that probably predates.
Probably like 2012, 13.
Right. So 12, 13 years ago. And so that was kind of where it all started. And again, I wasn't around for this time. I've just done my research on the history. And so those were like the major players, and that grew. And then it obviously became like Cooper working with Jason with lab management, and then Daniel Brandon and Bethany Shapburn and Josh Bridges. And then obviously O'Keefe had Katrin and other big names, right? I don't know, Cole Sager, et cetera. And then I started working in this industry in 2021 with lab management, like a part of that team or an extension of that team with Ariel. And I'm not great at like fake it till you make it. So for me, it was like, I'm going to do a year with Ariel and see, am I good at this job? Can I help create some opportunities for her that make sense? And do I enjoy this work? And so we did that for a year just with her. And then the next year it was like, I brought on 2 or 3 more athletes. But what I realized over time that I'm getting at is like, although I'm not competing with those people, we are all competing for market share. Like brands only have so much money, and there's only so many brands in the space. And so it was like, okay, well, in order to compete for the sake of creating opportunities for these athletes, I do actually need to grow the company and not just the sponsorships for the athletes. And so growing the company looks like recruiting, keeping my eye out for the up and coming people. And that was really kind of the goal, was like, I have to look for up and coming people because lab management, Ripple, O'Keefe and Lab are like, they're one now. And then you have Backlund Management with Snorri. Like they have
Sin
Agency. They have 80% of the games field as it stands.
Right.
So there's no, I'm not, one, I don't try to, I get poach. And 2, they're not leaving anyways. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh shoot, I actually have to look for who else is new. And that was like a conscious effort of like, Austin was like one of those early people of like, he's our American male. And I got lucky for sure. And then after that, it was like, all right, I need to look for more. And then brought on Sydney Smith, who I think is a superstar. And we had, some athletes are evolving and some athletes are retiring. So it was kind of like, oh shoot, I'm losing some people. I really have to begin to look at this as a business instead of something I just do for athletes, like as like a side thing. And I don't say side thing as if it ever was less of a priority. It was just like when it was just aerial, I could spend at most 8 hours a week and do a pretty good job. And so now it's a full-time thing. It's not just me helping aerial. Now it's E3 Sports as an agency in the space. So yeah, I just kind of recognize if I want to be able to help these athletes more and more without them losing opportunities to the bigger players, I need to start to build a bigger business that can like offer greater value to these brands and therefore offer greater value to more athletes.
Where'd you come up with E3, by the way?
So E3 technically has been around since 2017 as a consulting agency. I still do consulting, like it's behind the scenes. It's not as sexy as athlete management, so you don't really see me talk about it publicly. And I started that out of a need of like people asking for business advice at the time. And so it stands for encourage, educate, and empower. Really the reason the name is like, okay, if I'm going to be a business consultant, what is like the framework in which I want to help people? And it really is kind of in that order. Like I want to encourage people to believe that they're capable of doing better, of accomplishing their goals. At that time, it was in business. Now it's business and sport. I want to educate them. Like if you're one of the athletes that works with me, and if you like to learn about the process, like you're going to know how I do what I do, what I'm doing at the time. Like I just try to educate people. It's in my nature. And then empower them to do it on their own. That really relates more to the business side. Like as a consultant, I never really want to have a client forever. Hopefully at some point in time, they're like, hey, I'm good. Or they just continue to grow and they continue to need me because they continue to grow. But at the end of the day, it's like, I want to empower people to reach their goals. So encourage them with the belief that they can reach them, educate them on how to do it, and then empower them to do it. It's really just a framework. And then E3 was born out of that mindset.
I did notice in the last couple, by the way, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know about the business part. And I think that a lot of times you see an acronym like E3. And then I actually asked Patrick this the other day. I'm like, if I asked Jared's athletes, do you think they would know what E3 stands for?
No, but if they have a shirt, it's probably on the shirt. But most
yeah.
of them can't wear my shirt anyways because they have clothing sponsors and stuff. But probably not. I would say 99.9%. I hope that the people that work for me at least know.
But I do think if they didn't know and then they found out, they'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I don't think you would put those principles down there, especially based on the amount of like self-reflection you do in your own life, if you didn't have like a confidence that you could sort of deliver on those things consistently.
Yeah, that's the hope.
And what I was going to say is I noticed, recently that you've added some diversity to the roster. You mentioned some of the younger guys, but you also have Tom, who is, as good as you'll find of a human, and also one of the best adaptive athletes that we've ever seen. You got Lindsay. She's in the high rocks world, which is kind of interesting. And then you've really started to go a bit international. You have had Sasha for a while, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Kalian's joined on, so you got the South Americans. You got Caitlin Van Zyl's been with you for a while, also down in Australia.
Right.
And you got some Europeans in here. And it feels like this is something that I'm really passionate about. Patrick and I talk about it all the time, that, this, whether it's the methodology or the sport, it's really starting to push global. And it seems like in the context of what you've been talking about, that's where you've been in more cases than not. I mean, Nate Ackerman, Austin Hatfield, a little different, but you've been kind of pushing the boundaries globally from the US.
Yeah. And I wish I could say that was like planned, but a lot of the athletes that we work with have sort of been serendipitously introduced to me through different opportunities. I remember I went on a podcast with Pedro from Coffee Pods and Wads like 3 or 4 years ago. And then Andre Houdet reached out to me afterwards. And I guess he just liked the things that I said. And so him and I started working together, and that led to Rebecca Vitteson. And then me living in Miami near Maddie, near Matilda Garnest. That was sort of the introduction for that, just like being around her. Caitlin Van Ziel was through Justin Kotler at Underdogs Athletics. So just a lot of, because again, the first 2-3 years, like I didn't really try to reach out. And until now, like even still, I would say like Austin's one of few people that I've actually reached out to. Nate was sort of somebody, someone from the Mayhem team asked me if I'd be interested. And I actually thought Nate was working with an agency. So otherwise I probably would have reached out to him. Cause I think Nate's a stud. And so that, again, it was like, it's been a couple of these athletes have been like, hey, Jared, would you be interested in working with this person? And I'm like, oh, didn't know they were available. So
nice surprise.
Yeah.
You got a couple of these guys are competing. You mentioned WFP. Nico Bidone and Nate are both competing at the WFP. People certainly could have seen them compete before, but it will likely be the first time seeing some of them compete. Nico has been impressive to me this year. I didn't know how he would do in live competition, and he's shown that he can hold his own.
Yeah, I think Nico is one of those people that has a ton of potential, and it's objective because you can see 2 years ago he was middle of the pack at Copa Sur. This year he's 6th place at NorCal Classic. I'm going to kind of probably throw his Wadland placement out just because
injury on that rope climb, something happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what else did he do recently? I was like looking at his numbers, man. I mean, the kid is like experiencing like a second puberty, which I think if there was like studies done, there's something that happens to dudes in that age. If they continue to train, you get like this extra growth spurt. So Nico is continuing to get fitter and fitter, and he spent about 2 weeks at Mayhem last month. And like, I think that for him, because he trains by himself in New York City all the time. And like I said, there's not a whole lot of like super duper fit people.
So you were actually the second fittest guy in New York City.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And there's people probably at his CrossFit gym that are far fitter than me too. I just didn't go to I only went to CrossFit South Brooklyn and then to Lifetime. He goes to Hell's Kitchen, and there's probably some pretty fit people at Hell's Kitchen. So
what about this guy?
Yeah, dude, Nate. I think Nate is the fittest guy not at the games. I think Nate should have been at the games. I think Nate probably would have been top 15 at the games. I'm really excited for Nate's potential. I think Nate is a freak athlete and, a stud, he's like a statue. So I'm excited to see what Nate will do. He did WFP last time. But I think he's kind of come a long way in the past 6 months, sort of recommitting to like a lifestyle of competitive CrossFit, working with Coach Dom, which he's worked with for a long time. But just, I think personally, he's like convinced himself like I belong and I'm ready to compete. And so I'm excited to see what he'll do. He was on the demo team, which is a great opportunity for him. Well-deserved, well-earned, however that works. So yeah, I'm stoked. We've got 5 people. We've also got Riley Beebe doing WFP. So
and she was there in Indianapolis as well.
Right. She had a little knee thing, so was doing great with Drew. But Riley's one of those girls 3 times at the CrossFit Games teen division and is 18 now. So, and there's usually, depending on who they are, there's usually a couple years for most of those people as they transition, which I'll say is one of the reasons why I love the idea of the WFP is like, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about the challenger division and whether or not it'll stay. I know that they're not getting the best registrations, but to me, I'm like, this is cool as an agent to have sort of my like next tier athletes, giving them an opportunity to compete live and in the environment of the best in the world, relatively the same workouts and like broadcasted, treated like pros. Like that's cool. I love it for the pros too, like for the Austins and Ariels of the world. But like the challenger division, it's nice that Nico has something to do this month. You know what I mean? It's nice that Riley has something to do, which I think she'll do Crash as well because she
did well in the qualifier there.
She did pretty well in the qualifier. So as long as nothing changes, she should go to Crash too. So yeah.
Well, and that kind of gets me to a place that I was hoping to get your perspective on it because I think for the agents in particular, and also someone who's had a lot of different perspectives, traveling around, working with people from all over the world that you have had, whether you've sought it out or it sought you out. Uh, Obviously, this season has been, I guess we'll say, uh, it's been contentious, and the other way to look at it is it's full of opportunity. And I think that what I've gathered from talking to different agents is, their job is to create the best environment for the athletes to pursue their potential on and off the field of play. And I'm just curious how you've approached that this year. Of course, you have your own feelings about everything, good, bad, and otherwise, and how you manage to deal with how you're feeling about it and continuing to just kind of be there for the athletes, whatever the decisions that they want to pursue.
So what's the question there, Brian? Sorry.
How have you, I guess I would say, what is it like for an agent, whether it's you or just agents in general, balancing your personal feelings about things with the goal of the agency, which is to provide opportunities for athletes?
It's pretty interesting because I would say prior to being an agent or athlete manager, I was a bit more opinionated, and like I would share those opinions through social media, platforms. I don't know why. I don't know. It's not that I think that people necessarily care. I was just a little bit more, I guess, outgoing in that way. But as an agent, you do have to throttle back how you feel about certain things for the sake of like the greater good of your agency and the athletes, right? Because you don't want to necessarily be some agent that the WFP hates, so your athletes don't get invited, or at least you assume maybe they're not inviting your athletes because they hate you, and or brands, right? So if I believe strongly about, let's just say I believe strongly about a political contender for the next presidency, or
Sure.
whatever. Not the right verbiage, but if candidate, I'm like the C word.
I just struggle with the C word too. I don't know.
And if I start to share about that, and all of a sudden I've got a left-leaning brand that's like, well, we don't want to work with Jared's athletes because Jared is obviously hard right, which I'm not. I'm a registered independent, for whatever that matters. But so then I am risking my athlete's ability to earn, and also my own ability to earn as the business owner, because of my opinion. So it is a unique experience to like have to throttle. Now, at times I still share my opinion if I think it's valuable and helpful. And I guess that's where I kind of come back to is like, okay, is it even important for me to share how I feel about a certain topic or whatever? And if I share this, is it helpful? Like, is it constructive criticism? And if not, then I just share that less anyways, because I also know it could negatively affect the agency. So it's a little more interesting these days, not just being an entrepreneur where I can like share my values and my thoughts and opinions freely in hopes that like, okay, the right people will consume the products that I'm selling because they believe in the same things or similar things. Now I'm like, oh, there's people that rely on me to build a business for them, AKA through sponsorships and opportunities. And I have to reflect on like a global platform because I have athletes all over the world.
Right.
So it's an interesting game to play. I just have to be more diplomatic, I guess, is the short version. Which sometimes can be tough because I do have thoughts and opinions that I think can contribute to the greater good of our sport and this community. But I'm like, well, until someone asks me, and it's a person who can actually make a difference, then I'm just going to keep a lot of those thoughts to myself.
Yeah, probably a good lesson for a lot of people right there. The other side of the coin, I would say, is the athletes trying to figure out when to compete, how often to compete, where to invest their resources. Have you had a chance to talk to any of your athletes as they've worked through that? And I'm just not even dealing with your athletes, but just at a bigger picture. Like, it's this question that I've often wrestled with. And since you have proximity to some of the best athletes in the world, do you think that there's a point where it's like it's too much competition in a 12-month cycle?
For sure. I think we're leaning towards that, like as we speak, which is tough. At the same time, they don't have to do these things, right? But if they don't, we'll say like the WFP, for example, and I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how all the point systems work. But I do know like if they don't do one, then it limits their ability to do the next one. And so while I say, hey, they don't have to do it, no one's forcing you, they are handicapping their career by not doing one of them versus doing all of them, and also trying to be the fittest on earth at the games, and also potentially doing, because like, who doesn't want to do Wadapalooza? Most people are going to do that. If you get invited to Rogue, you're most likely going to do that, right? So it is tough right now. I say tough loosely because, again, at the same time, it's creating opportunities for some people that either maybe didn't want to do the game season or didn't make the game season, or they're in that challenger division. So I'm not their coach, but I'm pretty close with a handful of them, and I communicate with all of them regularly. So those are conversations that I have on a regular basis. So again, it's like, if I have an athlete that didn't do the games, it's a no-brainer that you should be trying to do WFP, probably be trying to do Crash, definitely do Wadapalooza next year, definitely, depending on the athlete profile, try to do Rogue. So there's like some for sure's. But then if you are a games athlete, especially at the highest level, vying for that top spot, it's a question of, is this going to affect me negatively? And they don't know yet, right? They've only done one. Now, the conversations around like 5 next year and like a world tour, that's where it gets a little messy for some. Again, not for all, because not all are trying to be the fit at like the top, number one. So it's tough, man. I don't have the answer, but those are conversations that I'm having on a regular basis. And I always weigh in. Like, I always sort of preface with, hey, I'm not your coach. I don't even have to say that, but this is what I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's so many variables, you look at a lot of the people that are kind of only doing the WFP, they're older, they've been to the games many, many times. And it's a kind of something that they can plan around when they're starting to have families and maybe setting up the seeds for businesses beyond a pro athlete. So that makes a lot of sense that they would do that. The younger ones, you take someone like Nate, like, I don't think it necessarily matters what he does this year, just going out, getting competition experience, getting confidence. And there's a number of athletes like that where, like, that's the most important thing. And then staying healthy through that process, stringing together. That's, like that Brent Frykowski said it. I want to string together a healthy year, which means that sometimes I back off my training here, or I don't do a competition here or whatever, because I know that if I tweak this and I'm out for a week, then I've interrupted that year progress or whatever. I think that, and so that's I think on the younger side, it's like, get the competition experience that you can and stay healthy enough to keep training, in the times you're not competing. But no one answer for everyone, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We haven't had a one-on-one interview style podcast in a long time. Yesterday I had Wes Peters on. We were previewing the men for Mesa. I don't know if you saw the pics I put out there.
I just saw it before this. So pretty good. I have my opinions, but not too far off of what I expected.
I decided to take a couple risks. I actually think on paper this is Austin's to lose, but I don't know if he's ever been in that situation before. Like, he's kind of been this, like, how good is this guy? Let's see. But he won the last one. I think that, anyone who watched the games could see that there was a circumstance he could have won that too. And at the end of the day, the margin, what that really means is the margins at the top are very small.
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of just, like, I put some extra weight on the guys that I thought would be not disappointed, but maybe like motivated because they just missed out on something meaningful, which is Ricky.
Dallin's motivated. I think you put Dallin as first, right?
Yeah, I was like, I just feel like the guys that made the podium, they're gonna, like, it's just harder to like, you kind of did it, except for Ricky, because Ricky, I talked to him in Australia, and he told me, he goes, because I was talking, I talked to these guys about this stuff, and he just cut me off, and he's like, I don't care, I want to win. Like, that's what Ricky wants to do, and he was really close.
Yeah.
And so
Ricky is even an unhealthy Ricky is a dangerous competitor, but like a healthy, because I know at least last year maybe he was dealing with some shoulder or something. I don't remember what it was. I think that Torian and the games are the two healthiest competitions I've seen him compete at since he had the dirt bike injury, or the biking injury with the shoulder. Right. He's, whether it was the rolled ankle last year, sick at the first WFP tour stop, shoulder nagging him at Rogue on a couple things, whatever. And yeah, I mean, anytime you see an athlete that sort of seems like they're right up at the ceiling,
It's only a couple weeks later. He's just been in Nashville. It's not like he's traveling all around the world. You know, I don't know. I just feel like those guys are going to come in a little bit hungrier, and a little bit of hunger can make a big difference when the field's as tight as it is.
Yeah, and I mean, Ricky having not have to travel for this, because just from my experience with Ricky, he doesn't travel super well in terms of like competing within a week or two. So the fact that he's just been in the States this long, especially in the environment that he's in, you know, Ricky's a force to be reckoned with for sure. And then, yeah, like you've got Dallin, who's kind of like, you know, you got 5, 6, 7 guys that expected to win the games. And now they're all like, okay, this is my next shot. The unique thing is, I think for the first time in a long time, we've got 7 or 8 guys that can win or can podium, but it's so program dependent. And so I think more than ever, having a well-balanced weekend in terms of programming is so important. And that's, you know, it is what it is. I know like that was sort of frowned upon to talk about that in the past, but now it's just clear. Like the winner of these events is largely a little bit of luck, program dependent, and then obviously their fitness, but they all are in that same realm, you know.
And WFP is weird to evaluate in that format because there are 3 tour stops, but ultimately the winner is the one that has the most points across all 3. So while yes, I want to see a good balanced test that has the person who was the best on that weekend at the top in Arizona, I really want to see over, I think, 21 total workouts that he's programming for these guys. What does that look like? Yeah. Because we've never seen the games is capped out at 15, which is plenty, excessive maybe for one competition. But this is like a competition that's spanning three different places, several months, and a bigger breadth of workouts than we've ever had. And I do feel like it's going to be pretty difficult to say whoever comes out with the most points at the end of the season wasn't the best one this year.
Yeah. Well, my money's on Austin.
I put a lot of stock in Nate, though. I had him in the top half of the field. I do agree with you. I talked about it yesterday.
12, 13, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that he could have done something very similar to that had he been in the games field. So, but there's also guys like Tudor and Ty and Colton and Yella. I mean, there's just so many guys in that field. So
yeah. And
I think you're right on with Nate. Confidence is huge for him and it's building, and that's a scary combination.
Yeah. He's going to be really good. I think it's funny too, because I recognize this in myself. When you sign an athlete, immediately you just have a stronger bias towards that athlete. But I see Nate being like this next wave of really relevant characters, right? Like Dallin and them are still in the current wave. It's not like they're athletes of the past by any means, but like the James, Dallin, Jason, Tudor, like that was sort of a wave of younger guys coming in to challenge the Pats and the Noahs and the Brents, etc. But like I see Nate being a part of, and I'm not sure who's in that wave with him.
Ty Jenkins for sure, I think.
Ty Jenkins for sure. Leahy, if he can figure some things out. Maybe that's hype too. I'm not sure. He looked really good at Northland Classic though. But yeah, I think there's like a small handful of guys and girls like in this follow-up wave that are going to be challenging that like 8th to 15th spot, you know, in the games or games-esque, you know, competitions. And he's in one of them for sure. So.
You'll be out there?
Yeah. Yeah. They go next Thursday morning.
Nice.
Yeah. We've got, again, Ariel, Austin, Nico, Riley, Nate, and please forgive me if there's anybody else that I'm not forgiving. I think
you said 5. I think those are the 5 that I was counting too.
Yep. So it's gonna be a fun week.
And I can tell you this. I'll tell you this before we go. The point system, we're on top of it. Our goal throughout is to make sure that people understand what's going on. And it's actually, there are some athletes who just by the nature of competing in Mesa, challenger athletes will already have a baseline minimum points that guarantees them a spot in Copenhagen. I think Nate is in that group. Basically, if you've made the pro field both, you're in that group.
Oh, sick.
So that means that if you're a challenger in the WFP system, there's 2 check marks that you're trying to achieve. Get to Copenhagen, be in the top 20. If you're like, I think there are actually 5 men and 13 women that have already through challengers qualified for Copenhagen. 5 and 8, excuse me. So there's 13 total athletes.
Okay.
So those athletes, they've like checked the first box. Now every point that they get in Arizona is not trying to get to Copenhagen. It's actually count. It's like now they can focus just on being in that top 20,
Sick.
which simplifies things for them. Everybody else, there's like 7 women fighting for 3 spots, 5 guys fighting for, or 7 guys fighting for 5 spots, or whatever it is. But we're gonna outline that for everyone over the next week leading up to the competition, so that if they're watching, they understand.
Yeah.
Like anything, if you watch major golf right now, they're in the playoffs, so there's cut lines, and then you advance. That's what's going on here.
Is the broadcast for next weekend going to be on their site again, or will it be on YouTube this time?
So it'll be on their site. We have to host it on their site to do the language translations that we want to do. And also it really, really is helpful from avoiding copyright infringements from music. But there will be DVR playback on the site, so you can watch and go back.
That's really cool. They didn't have that last time, right? That was kind of one of the.
No, and I'll tell you this, because people, they like to be so critical. I watched Disc Golf Network for 3 years wishing they had that before they finally made the change. It only took WFP 1 competition to receive that feedback and integrate that. They will, I believe, be on YouTube within 24 hours of when they happen. So we'll upload them to YouTube much more quickly. And they're packaged more cleanly in the YouTube as well.
Yeah, like event 1, event 2, event 3.
It's actually like Saturday morning.
Okay.
Saturday afternoon, these pockets. So yeah, I mean, we learned a ton from the first event. It's a thing I've been like repeating is I think it's unfair to judge WFP as if that was their first ever event, because so many people had a lot of experience, but it was also unfair to judge it as if it was the 20th year of the CrossFit Games, because a lot of those people have had almost that entire time together working towards something. And even if you have a lot of experience bringing new people together, there has to be a learning curve. So
yeah, I will. This takes us down a rabbit hole, so we don't have to go far, but I will at least respond to that, in that I think probably the criticism that some of the criticism about that is there seems to be a perception that they were going to do it better in the first place. And I don't know if like Will's ever said that explicitly, right? So I'm not claiming that anybody did, but I will say that was like the original theme, is like WFP is starting and it's going to be better and you should sign with us. Again, I'm not saying anybody said that, but if I am reflecting on the negative feedback, I think some of that comes from the expectations that were built around what it will be like. Just for, I guess, added context. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's super fair to say. And yeah, I mean, if you build up the hype for yourself, then you better live up to it.
Right. Yeah. But I'm excited for next weekend. Again, I think it's a great opportunity for the athletes. I love watching the sport. Do I love traveling twice a month? Not really, but for a sport I love and athletes that I love working with, I'm willing to do it. And I think it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see the twist on that 2-mile run, because 20 minutes is a little long.
Oh, no. It's just there didn't even need to be a time cap lifted. It's just a 2-mile.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No
they
twist.
just want, I mean, everyone's going to finish. That's the idea.
Okay. Got it. All right. Maybe that's public knowledge, but if not, you heard it here first. It's just
it was amazing to me how much attention was given to that time cap there. It's like,
attention is good. I mean, not all the time, but most of the time, attention is good.
True. All right. Well, I promised you it would be an hour. I think we did a good job there.
We did, dude.
Thank you.
Catching up.
Thanks for doing that. And yeah, we'll see you, I guess, in 9 days.
Yeah, I'll see you next weekend. See you, Brian. Thanks for having me, brother.
Later, Jared. Take care.
Bye.